Om Prithvi Shantirantariksha Shantir Tyau Shantir Disha Shantiravantara Disha Shantiragni Shantir Vayu Shantiraditya Shantish Chandrama Shantir Nakshatrani Shantirapa Shantiroshadaya Shantir Vanaspataya Shantir Gau Shantiraja Shantirashva Shantir Purusha Shantir Brahma Shantir Brahmana Shantir Shantireva Shanti Shantirme Astu Shantihi. May there be peace on earth and in the sky. May there be peace in the water and in all directions. May there be peace in the plants, in the trees, and in animals. May there be peace in the hearts of all beings. May there be peace in everyone and in everything. Sarvetra sukhinas santu, sarve santu niramayaha, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschid dukkha bhag bhavet, sarvastaratu durgani, Sarvo bhadrani pashyatu, sarvas sadbuddhimapnotu, sarvas sarvatra nandatu. May all be happy and healthy. May all see what is good, and may no one experience misery. May all overcome their obstacles and acquire good tendencies. May people everywhere find joy and fulfillment.
Swamiji. Hari Om, Pranam to all of you. Today I'll be reading from Richard Schiffman's sublime text on Sri Ramakrishna called A Prophet for the New Age. I'll be reading from chapter 9, The Devotees Come. The reader will remember Surendranath Mishra, whom Ramakrishna had praised, causing Manmohan such terrible anguish of spirit. If Manmohan's great demon was jealousy, then Surendra's was drink. And this habit, aside from the havoc it wreaked in Surendra's life, was a source of acute embarrassment to the other devotees, who feared it would reflect badly on Ramakrishna himself. It was this concern with scandal that caused Ramachandra Datta to approach Surendra one day and honestly press him to give up the bottle. But Surendra would have none of it. The master would certainly warn me if it were really bad for me. He knows all about it. Surendra insisted. Very well then, Ramachandra agreed. Let's go and visit him now. I'm sure he'll tell you to stop drinking. Surendra consented to the test and vowed that he would do whatever Ramakrishna asked. His only stipulation was that Ramachandra not bring up the subject. Arriving at the temple a short time later, the devotees found the master seated under a tree, appearing radiant and detached, as if he were only partially conscious of his surroundings. Immediately after prostrating themselves before him, Ramakrishna turned to Surendra and spoke as if he were picking up a thread of something just said. But Surendra, why when you are drinking wine do you have to think of it as just ordinary wine? You should offer it to the Mother Kali first and then drink it as her prasad. Only you must be careful not to get drunk. Don't let your footsteps stumble or your mind wander. At first, you'll feel only the sort of excitement that you usually feel, but that will soon lead to spiritual joy. It was Ramakrishna's way to guide each of his devotees gently along the path most natural to him. He was careful not to impose his will on another. He knew that to do so, even with the best of motives, risks doing violence to nature. Above all, he was convinced that nothing good could come from the mere suppression of an impulse. A river has no need of barriers. If it dams itself up, it stagnates and it becomes foul. Better, as in Surendra's case, to divert the stream than to block its flow. The moralist, of course, wouldn't understand this, as he wouldn't be likely to appreciate the subtlety of Ramakrishna's advice to Surendra. From his perspective, a thing is either right or wrong, black or white. If drinking is an evil, then it must be stopped at all costs, he would insist. But for a man of spiritual vision like Sri Ramakrishna, nothing can be said to be evil in of itself. An act becomes evil only when we make it so. And what man has made evil through his slackness and indulgence, he can just as easily make good by respect and reverence and vigilant care. Moreover, by looking at Surendra without passing judgment, Ramakrishna was able to make a wonderfully astute psychological observation, something the moralist, with his built-in blinders and one-dimensional worldview, would have missed entirely. He saw paradoxically that Surendra's drinking expressed a healthy impulse to a greater freedom and fuller joy. However imperfectly, however wrong-headedly that impulse had been channeled, the fact remained that the very urge that drove Surendra to drink was the same one that was driving him to God. And that impulse had to be respected at all costs. So Ramakrishna didn't insist that Surendra give up the drink. On the contrary, he urged him to take his habit to its logical conclusion and use it consciously and with full control for the same aims toward which it had heretofore been blindly striving: a wider freedom and more spiritual joy in life. In doing so, Ramakrishna was skillfully applying an ancient tantric principle: leave the impulse in place, but transform it by changing its context. Let Surendra drink, but let his drinking become, by a simple shift of attention, a sacrament, a tool for the expansion of consciousness. And Ramakrishna's advice turned out to be precisely on target. The simple ritual act of offering wine to the Divine Mother worked almost miraculously to redeem a shameful and private indulgence and transform it into something life-giving. Like the high priest before the altar, Surendra now lifted his glass with a sharp thrill of devotion. While Ramakrishna could show a maternal tolerance for the human weaknesses of his devotees, he was never in the least bit slack with himself. By our present-day standards, his lifestyle certainly appears harsh and austere. For a man to never touch alcohol, women, or even money will barely seem credible to many. Even some of Ramakrishna's contemporaries wondered about his dispassion at times and tested it in a variety of ways. Always, Ramakrishna was not offended when they did this. Indeed, he always insisted that a disciple has a responsibility to test his teacher as thoroughly as a money changer tests his coins. One devotee followed through on this advice by concealing a single coin under the master's mattress in order to probe the depths of his well-known aversion to money. Incredibly, the moment Sri Ramakrishna laid down on his bed, he cried out in pain. So sensitive had he become to even the presence of money, which he had always considered as one of the two great corrupting influences that drag a seeker away from the spiritual ideal. In keeping with Ramakrishna's ideal of spiritual poverty and absolute dependence on the Divine Mother for everything, his physical surroundings were utterly simple, and he refused all of the comforts which his wealthy devotees would have happily provided him. And yet, as we have seen, there was nothing of the Puritan in Sri Ramakrishna. He loved life with a passion that no mere pleasure seeker can hope to equal. And throughout his life, he maintained the breathless wonder of a child at the opulence of creation. In his way, he was lean and shorn of non-essentials. It was not the bitter leanness of the reformer, but the leanness of the superb spiritual athlete who knows exactly what he has to do to win the race, and then goes ahead and does it. It was the leanness of a lover.
Hello everyone, my name is Neil Dutta. I'm a sophomore at Sharon High School, and today I'll be talking about my philanthropic causes, many of my philanthropic causes, including my voluntary work with seniors at an organization called Volunteer for Seniors, and then I'll talk about my efforts in supporting communities and children living in Kenya. So when I was in elementary school, Swami Ji recommended me to watch a documentary called Little Angels of Colombia. And in that documentary, it is about a 9-year-old boy named Alvaro who supports seniors living in the slums of Colombia, and he organizes a group of children his age, and they visit the homes of these abandoned seniors and help them with chores like delivering their groceries, helping them bath, etc. And so this inspired me to do something similar within my own community and in other less fortunate communities around the globe. So I joined Volunteer for Seniors in 2022, and in that organization, I organized technology workshops where I teach seniors the basics of technology and help them avoid scam and phishing attempts. I also organize walkathon events and health seminars, so seniors are more active and healthy in the community. And lastly, I also visit seniors in their homes or in rehab centers. So apart from supporting seniors, I also love to travel, and during my visits to Egypt and Peru, I noticed that children were forced to leave school in order to support their families financially, and so this moved me to do something more. And in 2023, my mentor Adam Carter, he introduced me to an organization called Matania's Hope, which supports underprivileged children in communities living in Kenya. So I'll now provide some background information on Matania's Hope, which was founded in 2008 in Illinois by a woman named Miss Dark. Matania's Hope is mostly volunteer operated with 16 volunteers from Kenya and 9 volunteers from the US. And so far we have established and has sponsored over 400 children. We've provided food to more than 2,000 children daily. We have installed 65 rainwater tanks and have rescued many girls, many at-risk girls from early child marriages. So I've been involved in Matania's Hope for the past 2 years, where I serve as a junior board member of directors, and I work directly with the founder and have initiated many fundraising projects to raise money to support the different programs that Matania's Hope sponsors. So one key program we sponsor is the food porridge program, and in that program, often you'll find in Kenya that kids go 2 to 3 days without eating any food, and so a food porridge program will ensure that all 300 to 400 members in the school are guaranteed getting at least one meal of porridge, and this solves, it's very nutritious, and it solves the problem of malnutrition, the prevalent problem of malnutrition in Kenya, as well as increases school attendance. Another program we have is improving the infrastructure of classrooms for the students, which will provide a better learning environment for them. We also install rainwater tanks at drought-prone areas, and which helps provide easier access to communities, and also provides more clean water to avoid spreading diseases. And we also provide living essentials such as food, clothing, and books to children. And lastly, we rescue at-risk girls and offer them from early child marriages, and we offer them safety education and counseling services. So, other than supporting big programs like food porridge programs and rainwater tanks, which can support a whole community and school, we also help children personally by sponsoring them so that when they grow up, they can become successful and we can make their dreams achievable. So some examples are Mary Wanjiro, who's a high court, serves as a judge in the High Court of Kenya. Kelvin Wenda, who works as a chef in one of the most renowned hotel chains and is planning to write his own cookbook one day. Peter Motomi, who works as an overnight nurse, and Ambrose Kemenye, who's a flight attendant for Kenyan Airways. And so I got the privilege to interview all of them and learn their difficult childhood stories and how after Matania's Hope has sponsored them, they were able to go to school and grow up to be successful and also give back to the community. And so these stories show the power of education and the impact we can have when we help others. And so I also personally sponsor a girl named Masoni who was rescued from child marriage at the age of 6 and currently supporting her dreams of becoming a doctor. So when I first went in person to Kenya in 2023 with the support of Matania's Hope, I visited a school called the Nikasioki Primary School, and I met with the headmaster, and I saw firsthand how difficult these conditions were. There were children attending school with empty stomachs who haven't eaten for days. There was only one toilet for 300 children. There was no rainwater tank, so no one could drink water there. And there was inadequate learning facilities, and it was very heartbreaking to me. So since then, with the support of the founder, I've adopted this school in efforts. I've adopted the school in efforts to support and resolve all of these problems. And so I raise money by tutoring children in my community, creating quarterly newsletters for the donors and sponsors, creating crowdfunding like GoFundMe, and applying for grants in many organizations. And successfully these past 2 years, we were able to secure funding for a year-round porridge program for these next 2 years. We were able to establish 4 gender-neutral toilets, and we were able to establish 2 10-liter rainwater tanks, and kitchen shelter, which will support the food porridge program, and we were also able to get 2 wheelchairs for 2 students who can now attend school. And so what amazed me during my trip in 2023 was seeing how, despite living in such extreme poverty, that these children and families showed extremely resilience and hope and gratitude. And one mother who, in spite of poverty, when I visited her home, she gave me handmade gifts. So as you can see, this is me with the girl I'm sponsoring. This is their hospitality, letting me in their house. And this is the handmade gift they're giving me. And these are the 2 children who we were able to get wheelchairs for. And so I also went to Kenya this past summer, and I volunteered in medical outreach events, providing free health checkups in nearby villages. And I got to teach at the regional schools, and I helped them make reusable sanitary pads for the female students. And the most fun part of the trip was spending time with the children and playing, tossing and catching with the football. And so you can see here, that's me measuring the circumference of their arm. It's me teaching some various topics to students, just spending time. And so lastly, during my trip, I got the opportunity to meet with some of the volunteers of Matania's Hope, and I got to know their extremely challenging backgrounds and how Matania's Hope has shaped their lives. And each of them have taught me very important life lessons. And so when I interviewed them, and so one particular individual is named Mr. Fanwell, and he currently works as the official guardian for the Matania's Hope's Children's Place, where he works at the center and he takes care of all the kids' needs. And so in the quote over here, you can see the inspiring message he told me during my interview with him. So he says, "My message to young people is to never give up hope. It may seem like it takes time, but hope gives us the push to keep going. Together, we should plant seeds of love like planting trees that grow into a forest, providing shelter for all. If young people and the older generation unite, we can build a village that cares for and supports one another. In the end, our unity will make us stronger and create a community that lifts everyone up." So I want to close by saying that through my work with Matania's Hope, I've learned that even in the face of extreme hardship, there is resilience and hope, and that these experiences have taught me the importance of compassion, humility, and the importance of education. And I've seen firsthand how these small actions can lead to a meaningful change in someone's life, and we all have the ability to make a difference, whether by supporting a cause, volunteering, or even just spreading awareness. And so I encourage you to consider how you can contribute to lifting communities in need both locally and globally, and every effort, no matter how small, has the power to create a lasting impact. Thank you.
Om Asatoma Satkamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Aviravirma Magedhi Rudrayate Dakshinam Mukham Tenamam Pahi Nityam. May the divine lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May the divine consciousness fill our hearts and protect us. Thank you for those two readings, both very inspiring. And that is one of the purpose that we have this Antar Yoga once every month, that the readings that we have here, the ideas that we hear, not only during Antar Yoga, but during the other satsangs, and also the readings that all of us do and the conversations we have with our friends, that the idea is that if there's anything we hear that makes sense, that resonates with our head and heart, if it has the ring of truth to it, then it should not simply remain at the cerebral level, not simply in the idea of appreciating what is good. If something is right, something is good, then the next question would be, how can I use this in my daily life? How can I begin practicing it? How can it become a part of the way I think, the part of the way I relate to my work, to the people around me, and so on? And that's how then inner change is possible, and a change around us within a community as close to where we live or as far as Kenya. So that's the way, if we truly, sometimes we do despair at the state of the world and how terrible things are. And that's true in some sense. But it's not enough to then simply agonize over it, but to see how in our own little way we can be the process of change in some ways. And that change will always begin with oneself. That my ability to help others, my ability to improve the situation around me is directly related to the ability of myself to change myself, the ability to improve myself. To the extent I'm able to improve my own self, I may be able to bring about some improvement around me. So speaking about inspiration, this morning I just picked up this book. So this little notebook has a history. So I started writing in it in 1977. So that's almost now, how much is it? 23 plus 24, 47? 47 years ago. So in another 3 years, this will be 50-year-old. So something I had mentioned earlier, that when I joined the monastery in 76, one of the elderly monks there, he told me, don't read any other books right now. Just read Swami Vivekananda's complete works. And so, I took his words to heart, and I started reading. And this was before, I hadn't even seen a computer at that point. There was no Google. There wasn't anything digital. And so, and Vivekananda's complete work, those of you know, there were 8 volumes then. Now there are 9 volumes, more than 5,000 pages. And the index of those hardcover copies isn't that great, not that helpful. And so I was wondering that when I start reading this, and if I like something, and then when I keep on reading, and then how will I find it back if I want to go back to it again? And so I requested the monastery if they could give me a notebook. And this is about, I think it's probably about 250 to 300 pages notebook they gave me. And I started writing in it, and with the ink pen, whatever passages somehow appealed to me. And so this book has still survived. Man, it's held up pretty well. Like, just few pages have become loosened up, but it's pretty good. And And those of you who, of course, nowadays people have even digital journals and so on. So it's possible to do writing either in a hard copy like this with the notebook and a pen, or on a computer now. It's helpful in many different ways, but one of the ways in which this could be meaningful is sometimes when we go back, and the journal could be either whatever had happened in the course of the day, which will have some record there, or the kind of thoughts that are uppermost in our mind at any time. And the advantage of putting this down is later on, months later, years later, you go back and then you see not only what happened on a particular day, but how your mind was thinking. And so I've treasured this book. It's sort of beyond for me personally. I don't think it has any value for anyone. But when I go back to it, and I see many of these entries I have made into this, and so most of it is really not so much my thoughts. I was just a teenager then. I was just 18, 19 years old. And so it was more about, oh, this is the passage that really speaks with me. So I just kind of copied these passages from Vivekananda's complete works. And so now when I look back and say, oh, this is the passage that somehow captured my imagination then. And what I don't know what it means. Now, many of these passages I look back and I say, they still capture my imagination. So what inspired me when I was a teenager still continues to inspire me almost a half a century later. I don't know whether that means I haven't evolved or it is something. But anyway, so what I thought today will be just share with you one of the, some of these pages have kind of come apart. So one of the passages that I have returned to again and again, and these are Vivekananda's words from volume 4. It's a talk that he gave on the practice of religion. So I'll just read out to you and see how you feel about it. So this is from Swami Vivekananda's works. So he says, nature grinds all of us. Keep count of the ounce of pleasure you get. In the long run, nature did her work through you. And when you die, your body will make other plants grow. Yet we think all the time that we are getting pleasure ourselves. Thus, the wheel goes round. Therefore, to realize the spirit as spirit is practical religion. Everything else is good so far as it leads to this one grand idea. That realization is to be attained by renunciation, by meditation, renunciation of all the senses, cutting the knots, the chains that bind us down to matter. I do not want to get material life, do not want the sense life, but something higher. That is renunciation. Then, by the power of meditation, undo the mischief that has been done. We are at the beck and call of nature. If there is sound outside, I have to hear it. If something is going on, I have to see it. Like monkeys. We are 2,000 monkeys concentrated, each one of us. Monkeys are very curious, so we cannot help ourselves and call this enjoying. Wonderful, this language. We are enjoying the world. We cannot help enjoying it. Nature wants us to do it. A beautiful sound. I am hearing it as if I could choose to hear it or not. Nature says, go down to the depths of misery. I become miserable in a moment. We talk about pleasures of the senses and possessions. One man thinks me very learned. Another thinks he is a fool. This degradation, this slavery, without knowing anything. In the dark room, we are knocking our heads against each other. What is meditation? Meditation is the power which enables us to resist all this. Nature may call us, look, there is a beautiful thing. I do not look. Now, nature says, there is a beautiful smell. Smell it. I say to my nose, do not smell it. And the nose doesn't. Eyes do not see. Nature does such an awful thing. Kills one of my children and says, now, rascal, sit down and weep. Go to the depths. I say, I don't have to. I jump up. I must be free. Try it sometimes. In meditation, for a moment, you can change this nature. Now, if you had that power in yourself, would not that be heaven, freedom? That is the power of meditation. A small passage, but there is so much. When we when you talk about freedom, think about freedom, we see how deep and subtle the idea of freedom can be. That sometimes when the illusion of freedom is worse than bondage. And what the point is pretty clear, it was pretty obvious, simple language Swamiji is pointing out, that even if there is a sound and I hear the sound, we think, well, that's just life, that's natural. But what Swamiji is pointing out is that we are being moved around like puppets, and nature is controlling us. And the more we give in to the way nature does, we may think we are free, and nature is having a good laugh, saying that, oh, these people are just completely under my control. They don't even know it. And what the practice of meditation is something which forces us to resist the natural impulses. And that's why we try as much as we can to find a quiet place. We try to shut our eyes. And as much as we can shut the world out through the senses. But we know nature has a way. I mean, clearly, even the slightest of sound can distract us. We react to every little thing that is happening around us. And even if we have succeeded in shutting down all the senses, the nature has a way of moving our mind. And a perennial difficulty most of us have in order to focus completely in our prayer and meditation is the mind is getting distracted. And why does the distraction occur? It's nature just kind of playing with us. And so Vedanta, in its truest sense, would be asserting our freedom means we won't allow anyone to control us. I mean, now this whole fear about AI, that at some point AI might take over the world. In a way, long before AI may or may not take over everything, nature has already taken over the world. And so the spirit of Vedanta is to say, I must be really free. Just as we don't want other people controlling us or the government controlling us and so on, there's so much this talk about individual freedom. Let's push this idea of freedom to its logical conclusion, that we don't want anything outside of me to control me. And that's possible only if I'm able to exert that control over myself. So these natural impulses, the way to react, the way to do it, I must have the freedom to say no. Even if someone is irritating me, if someone is being a nuisance, and it's of course, if someone is irritating me, for me to get irritated seems to be a very natural reaction. But my freedom is, if someone is trying to irritate me, and I refuse to get irritated. If someone is trying to make me angry, and I refuse to get angry, that's my freedom. And that's possible, of course, the more control we have over ourselves. And so these are among the primary practices in Vedanta, some of which, as some of you may have seen, we discussed this in some of the earlier satsangs. It's also being now part of the Vedanta blogs that we have. The kind of qualities we need: restraint of the mind, restraint of the senses. Every time the mind goes forth, the ability to bring it back. That's something that we will take a look next Sunday. So it's important to reflect on the idea of freedom. What is freedom in its deepest sense of the term? Superficially, we all understand what freedom is. But can we look deeply and say, can I be completely free in every sense of the term? So these are some of the thoughts that spoke to me from this passage. And I would encourage you that not only when you read Vivekananda or any Vedanta books, but any other serious reading that you do, it's not sometimes helpful to do too much at a time, too much reading at a time, because then the mind gets just filled and we are just collecting information at that point. But if it is a serious study, then it's good to read a little bit, pause a little bit, and then reflect and say, does this, what I read just now, does it mean anything to me? Is it relevant to me? Does it make sense? We don't have to accept anything blindly. Just because the book says it, we don't have to accept it. But if it resonates with us, then we must somehow find a way for it to seep inside our personality. Because ultimately, spiritual life is not about how many lectures we have attended, how many books we have read. Spiritual life is primarily about self-transformation. Whether I have become now a better person, a better human being, a better version of myself. That's the only way spiritual progress can be measured. And so there is a lot that we can think about and reflect on in these words. Om Jananim Saradam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagadgurum Padapadme Tayo Shritva Pranamami Muhur Muhu.